Hello and welcome to this new thread to the podcast, Epic Epilogues, because I like alliteration. Like prologues, epilogues are little glimpses into the wider theatre world around the play, and they are often quite reasonably cut from productions because they're talking to an audience who've been dead 400-odd years. Our Empress of the Epilogue is Fiona Thrale, who will be joining our Queen of the Prologue, Sarah Golding, for semi-regular performances of these texts. We start with some John Marston and the epilogue to The Malcontent, a play that I've actually had the privilege to have seen twice in my lifetime, once featuring Anthony Sher with the Royal Shakespeare Company some years ago, and quite recently in the wonderful Edwards Boys all-male performance. It's a knotty, dark, satirical play, knotty in terms of text, the words do very interesting dances, and in terms of action. It's about usurpation and revenge, with a deposed duke infiltrating his old court as a malcontent, malvole, to regain power, which, spoiler alert, he does. It's a dark comedy, but it is a comedy riffing on other plays and playwrights from the time, which was around 1602, 1603, 4-ish. But enough of that, let's get to the epilogue. So, the play ends.
Your modest silence, full of heedy stillness, makes me thus speak.
Oh, and gonna stop you there. There are several ways to take and play this line. It's largely dependent on how the play is received. Option 1. The audience is rapturously applauding.
Your modest silence, full of heedy stillness, makes me thus speak.
In which case, you can say the line with a light-hearted irony. Alternatively, the audience is deathly silent. A tumbleweed passes.
Your modest silence, full of heedy stillness, makes me
The
thus...
actor suggests that their silence is modest. A half-joke to mollify an angry crowd and get off the stage as quickly as possible. Option 3, the audience is genuinely stunned into silence. Unsure, gobsmacked, amazed. Now compliment them on their wonderfulness, be really humble, and again, get the hell off that stage. So in that sense, it's a really quite clever opening gambit for the close of the play. Prologues and epilogues are moments when the barrier between the playwright and the audience is dropped. It's mostly he speaks to them and is often ever so humble. We hope you liked it. We are unworthy of your love, but give it anyway. Alternatively, they can be defiant and sometimes aggressive, especially about the competition. Now, 1602-3-4 comes on the other side of the War of the Theatres, or the Poets' War, which had been raging for a few years previously. The War of the Theatres was a literary mudslinging match, and it was all the rage in prologues, epilogues, and even in the plays themselves. Marston had been dropping bombs on Ben Jonson, and vice versa. But now, all is made up. Happiness and light, and a little brown-nosing and humility is all the rage. This epilogue is all about a now-established playwright apologising for some of his youthful writing, i.e. a few years ago, noting the work of others, Ben Jonson, and the usual appeal to the audience to forgive any failures in the play, to judge the work on the intent of the writer rather than the final execution, which, considering the play, is possibly not the best place to be going with this.
A voluntary illness is merely senseless.
Now here I should note we went with senseless in this line, which is in a later edition. Scuseless is the earlier reading.
A voluntary illness is merely senseless. But unwilling error, such as proceeds from too rash youthful fervour, may well be called a fault, but not a sin.
Ah, rash youthful fervour is forgivable Isn't it? Isn't it?
Rivers take names from founts where they begin.
Judge me from where I was coming from, like rivers come from a source. Judge me from the source, not from where the river is going. The rivers have their names come from the source of the river. That's where...
Rivers take names from founts where they begin. Then let not too severe an eye peruse the slighter breaks of our reformed muse.
Don't shoot the pianist, he's trying his best. This might be an acknowledgement that his rival Ben Jonson was correct about Marston's affected writing style, as possibly ridiculed in the Poetaster. The prologue of which is one of the salvos of the War of the Theatres.
Stay, monster, ere thou sink! Thus on thy head set we our bolder foot, with which we tread thy malice into earth.
And is rather useful listening to, which is lucky because it's available now on this podcast.
Who could herself of faults detect, but that she knows 'tis easy to correct.
I'm not perfect.
Though some men's labour, troth, to err is fit, as long as wisdom's not professed, but wit.
Or until something better comes along, enjoy this.
Then till another's happier muse appears, till his Thalia feast your learned ears, to whose desertful lamps pleased fates impart art above nature, judgment above art. Receive this peace, which hope nor fear yet daunteth.
A self-aware artist knows how much better he can be.
He that knows most how much he wanteth.
And finally, in relation to Ben Jonson, here's a line from the prologue to Cynthia's Revels.
About his prosy, which, he knows, affords words above action. Matter above words.
And here's the last few lines again.
Art above nature, judgment above art.
The war between Marston and Jonson is over, this says. The two are paraphrasing and quoting lines and phrases at each other, and the Malcontent, Marston's rough comedy, is even dedicated to Ben Jonson. From war and hate, we've reached reconciliation to the point of mutual masturbation. Thus is the cycle of life complete. The extract from Cynthia's Revels was performed by Sarah Golding, the full prologue of which is available on the podcast. This won't be the last you'll be hearing of Marston. There's a fair amount of material on the way, and I suspect he will be a mainstay of some of our upcoming live shows. But for now, I've been your host, Robert Crighton, and following are a couple of slightly different takes of the epilogue to The Malcontent by John Marston, performed by the fabulous Empress of the Epilogue, Fiona Thrale.
Your modest silence, full of heedy stillness, makes me thus speak. A voluntary illness is merely senseless, but unwilling error, such as proceeds from too rash youthful fervour, may well be called a fault, but not a sin. Rivers take names from founts where they begin. Then let not too severe an eye peruse the slighter breaks of our reformed muse, who could herself of faults detect, but that she knows 'tis easy to correct. Though some men's labour, troth, to err is fit, as long as wisdom's not professed, but wit. Then till another's happier muse appears, till his Thalia feast your learned ears, to whose desertful lamps pleased fates impart art above nature, judgment above art. Receive this peace, which hope nor fear yet daunteth. He that knows most how much he wanteth. Your modest silence, full of heedy stillness, makes me thus speak. A voluntary illness is merely senseless, but unwilling error, such as proceeds from too rash youthful fervour, may well be called a fault, but not a sin. Rivers take names from founts where they begin. Then let not too severe an eye peruse the slighter breaks of our reformed muse, who could herself of faults detect, but that she knows 'tis easy to correct, though some men's labour, troth, to err is fit, as long as wisdom's not professed, but wit. Then, till another's happier muse appears, till his Thalia feast your learned ears, to whose desertful lamps pleased fates impart art above nature, judgment above art. Receive this peace, which hope nor fear yet daunteth. He that knows most, how much he wanteth.